Under a bruised evening sky, the storm came crawling over the plains like a wounded beast. The land held its breath beneath it, dust turning to mud, wind whispering names of the gone. Naomi Rivers, aged 20, pressed a trembling hand against her satchel as if to steady her heartbeat. Her grandmother had died that morning, her last words faint as embers. "Find the good heart, my child." Now Naomi walked alone across the open prairie, barefoot, her long braids soaked with rain and grief. The storm was her only witness, and it seemed to follow her with a kind of mournful curiosity. Would the world offer her mercy tonight, or another door slammed shut? She spotted it through the curtain of rain, a single cabin, its lantern flickering like a faraway heartbeat. Smoke curled from its chimney, thin and uncertain, and hope, something she hadn't dared to feel in days, rose within her chest. Each step closer was heavier, like the earth itself wished to keep her still. She hesitated at the door. The wind howled behind her, urging her forward. Finally, she lifted her hand and knocked once, twice, 3 times. Silence answered first. Then came the creak of hinges and the soft glow of lamplight spilling across the threshold. Calder Hayes, age 30, stood there, a man built like the land itself, broad, quiet, and weathered by too much sky. His face was half-shadowed beneath the brim of his hat, his eyes as pale and distant as winter dawn. "You lost." His voice was low, almost kind, yet careful in its distance. Naomi opened her mouth, but words caught in her throat. "I've lost everything," she managed to whisper. Rain slid down her cheek, indistinguishable from tears. He studied her for a long moment, the silence stretching between them like a question neither could answer. Something in her expression, raw, unguarded, stirred the hollow place inside him where his late wife's laughter used to live. He remembered the last storm he had seen her in, fever-slick and fading fast. The ache of that memory softened his stance. "You can come in till sunrise," he said at last, stepping aside. The cabin's warmth swallowed her whole. The scent of cedar and tobacco clung to the air, along with the faint sweetness of bread gone stale. Naomi stood by the fire, her damp dress clinging to her frame, steam rising from her skin like a spirit's sigh. She murmured a prayer in her mother tongue, soft syllables of thanks that Calder pretended not to understand, though each note struck something in him. The fire crackled, echoing the quiet between them. He busied himself at the hearth, pouring coffee into 2 tin cups. "Ain't much," he said, offering one to her. When their fingers brushed, a spark leapt unbidden, small but undeniable. Naomi looked at him, searching for cruelty and finding only exhaustion. "It's enough," she said simply. Outside, wolves howled, and she wondered if the sound was warning or blessing. She sipped the bitter brew and stared into the flames. Would he send her away come morning? When dawn came pale and silver, Naomi awoke to find bread and jerky laid on the table. The gesture, though small, carried weight, proof of kindness unspoken. Through the window she saw Calder mending a fence, his broad shoulders lit by new light. His movements were deliberate, steady, like a man trying to fix more than broken wood. She watched him and felt the strange stir of gratitude, almost guilt. He caught her gaze once, gave a small nod, then turned away as if even that was too much to bear. Later, in town, whispers spread like prairie fire. Hayes took in a wild one, the shopkeepers murmured. Don't he know what folks will say? Shame pressed at his back as he rode home that evening, but when he saw Naomi sitting on the porch steps humming softly, a tune threaded with sorrow and sunlight alike, the noise of judgment seemed to fall away. He lingered behind her, listening to the song without daring to interrupt. There was something cleansing in it, something that reminded him what it meant to be human again. Days bled into weeks. The rhythm of their lives fell into quiet balance. She cooked simple meals, tended the horses, and in the evenings, he told her stories about the land, how the hills once belonged to her people, how he'd never felt it was rightly his. She smiled then, faintly, and said, "Maybe the land chooses who listens." That night they shared a silence that felt like understanding. Curiosity hummed in the air. Was this companionship, or the fragile beginning of something deeper? One evening, a windstorm swept through, fierce and sudden. The shutters banged against the walls, the fire sputtered. Naomi rushed to secure the window, hair flying loose, eyes bright with determination. Calder moved beside her, their hands brushing again as they forced the latch shut. For a heartbeat, neither stepped back. Rain hammered the roof, their breaths mingling. "You shouldn't stay here," he murmured. "People talk." Her gaze did not waver. "Let them." He wanted to speak, to tell her how the silence of this cabin had been heavier before she filled it, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, he just looked at her, and she understood. That night, by the hearth, she told him about her grandmother. How the old woman had believed that spirits followed those who showed mercy. Calder smiled faintly, a ghost of humor returning. "Then I reckon I'm haunted already." Naomi reached out, her fingers tracing the scar on his hand, the one left by a long-ago accident. "Haunted maybe," she whispered, "but still kind." The room felt sacred for a moment, the firelight wrapping them in gold. Then, 3 sharp knocks shattered it. At the door stood Sheriff Dunn, rain dripping from his coat brim. "Evening haze," he said curtly. "Town council's talkin'. Says that woman's got to go by sundown tomorrow. Folks don't take kindly to," Calder's jaw tightened. "She ain't done no harm." "Ain't about harm," the sheriff muttered. "It's about belonging." After he left, silence returned heavier than before. Naomi packed her satchel without a word. Calder watched, fists clenched at his sides. "You don't have to," he said quietly. "They'll make it hard for you," she replied, tying her braid. "You've already lost enough." He stepped forward, eyes fierce in the lamplight. "This land took my wife. I won't let it take you." The tremor in his voice betrayed him, and she looked up, tears slipping free. "Then where do we go?" They rode out at twilight, the prairie stretching endless before them, sky bruised but clearing. The horses' hooves drummed a steady promise against the damp earth. Behind them, the town lights faded. Ahead, the horizon opened like forgiveness. They didn't speak until the stars began to burn through the darkness. "There," Calder said, pointing to a meadow blanketed in wildflowers, untouched and shimmering under moonlight. "We'll stop here." Waiting there was old Clara May, the midwife who had once buried Calder's wife. She smiled softly at the sight of them. "I wondered when Mercy'd find you again, boy." From her satchel, she drew a worn Bible, its pages curled by years of weather and tears. "If you mean to start anew, best to do it proper." Beneath that vast and tender sky, Clara bound their hands with a strip of white cloth. "Do you, Calder Hayes, take this woman beside you?" He met Naomi's eyes. "I do." His voice broke like dawn. "And do you, Naomi Rivers, take him?" She nodded, unable to speak, tears glinting like silver on her cheeks. They kissed, soft at first, then deeper, the world falling utterly still around them. Fireflies rose from the grass, glowing faintly, drifting like the spirits her grandmother had promised. The wind sighed through the flowers, carrying away every word except one, home. Seasons turned. Their cabin stood in that meadow now, walls built with both hands and hope. Strangers sometimes came to the door, widows, orphans, wanderers, and Naomi never turned them away. People in town began to speak differently. The cowboy and the river woman, "They're building something good out there." Calder would smile whenever he heard it, though he pretended not to care. Naomi would only say, "Kindness travels farther than gossip ever will." In the evenings, she would sit by the window, writing in a small leather-bound journal. "Love," she wrote one night, "is not found, it's built, piece by piece, like a cabin meant to outlast the storms." Calder read it once over her shoulder, then kissed the top of her head and whispered, "Then we'll keep building." Years later, old Clara May, her hair gone white as ash, would tell their story by lantern light to anyone who would listen. She'd begin with the storm, with the lost girl and the lonely man, and end with a meadow where laughter never fully fades. Sometimes she'd pause and glance toward the open plains, swearing she could still hear two voices mingling with the wind. And if you ever find yourself alone beneath a wide, indifferent sky, remember them: the giant cowboy who learned to open his door, and the native woman who taught him how to stay. Mercy, after all, is just another word for shelter. And somewhere beyond the thunder, love still rides the horizon, quiet as dawn, endless as the land itself.